Hello, and thank you for joining me again as we continue our discussion on the cardiovascular system and we talk about blood. So, in the last video, we talked about erythrocytes, which are our red blood cells and their function in the body. Today, we're going to talk about white blood cells, plasma, and platelets moving forward. So, for starters, you're going to be able to describe the function of a white blood cell. We'll give it a name, we'll describe its function. You'll be able to infer the cause of illness based on our white blood cell count. We'll be able to talk about what platelets do for the body, describe the role of plasma in the blood, and then we'll look at these things called high-density lipoproteins and low-density lipoproteins when we talk about this thing called cholesterol. So let's get started. So first we have white blood cells. You will need to know, it's important that white blood cells are called leukocytes. So remember, red blood cells are erythrocytes, white blood cells are leukocytes. So leukemia is a white blood cell disorder. Some things that white blood cells do. One, they protect against disease. And these are part of the immune system. And so again, these are your different types of white blood cells. So you have these things called neutrophils. You have eosinophils, basophils, monocytes, and lymphocytes. So you have both T and B lymphocytes. And these all have different functions. And so your neutrophils are the first ones to the infection site. They phagocyze bacteria. Remember, phagocytosis is kind of like cell eating. It engulfs a solid. Your eosinophils defend against parasitic worms. Your basophils release histamine. This is inflammation, or it leads to inflammation, which is when all your nutrients come rushing to the site of injury. This is why you take antihistamines, such as ibuprofen and Tylenol, to reduce swelling. We have monocytes, which phagocyze bacteria. They also break down dead cells and other debris along with that. And then your lymphocytes create antibodies. And so 25 to 33% of your white blood cells are these lymphocytes, which create antibodies, which are proteins that attach to foreign cells. So antibodies are proteins that attach to foreign cells and mark them for disposal. So this is how fighting infection kind of works. White blood cells work. So they fight infection in blood vessels and tissues, both. So whether it's a disease that's in the blood or it's in your tissues, they can fight both of them. They're transported through blood cells, through blood vessels, but can squeeze between cells to enter tissues where infection is present. So they can diffuse or pass from your arteries and veins, your vessels, into your tissues in order to neutralize the foreign object, foreign cells in your body. Pus is formed by bacteria cells, and so this is when we get pus formed. This is formed by bacteria cells. Leukocytes can also form this along with your damaged cells, and that's where this pus comes from. If we're talking white blood cell count, so we said most of the time your white blood cell count is pretty negligible because people tend to be pretty healthy. If you have an elevated count, so they have a baseline number, if you have a number that's marginally higher than that, that's an indication that you have some kind of infection. You are sick in some way, shape, or form. Whether you feel it or not, maybe your white blood cells are eliminating the cause of that without you having to feel it. But there's something in your body that's not supposed to be there. If you have a decreased white blood cell count and you aren't feeling well, typically that is indicative of a virus. So you have a viral infection as opposed to a bacterial infection. So if it's a bacteria and you're not feeling well, your white blood cell count should be elevated, higher. If it's a virus, your white blood cell count is actually going to be lower, which is kind of interesting, but it's a trademark characteristic of viral infections. So here is a blood vessel. This is actually a blood capillary. You have a leukocyte here, which you see is not terribly large. I mean, it fits through your capillaries and then is able to squeeze down into the tissue to fight infection. Here's another diagram, another schematic showing you have a splinter that punctures your skin. It's got these bacteria on it, and you have histamine being released along with your different white blood cells, which are working to neutralize the bacteria and destroy them. And so these guys are neutrophils, which are looking to find and destroy the bacteria which are the green dots that are now in your body because of the splinter. So those are white blood cells. Again, those are called leukocytes. Platelets are called thrombocytes. So you notice the thing that's changing is this prefix, the first word. Everything ends in cytes because we're talking cells. So erythrocyte, leukocyte, thrombocyte are all cells. So thrombo refers to platelets. These repair damaged blood vessels, and they do this by sticking together and to broken surfaces. So these are incomplete cells. They're not fully whole alone, and so they can link together, and in doing so, they clot your blood, which is great if you have a cut or an open sore. It's not so good if they're doing this inside your body, as that causes some issues. So you see size comparisons here. This is a red blood cell. These are your platelets. They are very small. Even comparatively, they're very small. And so they link together and kind of sew the opening shut, essentially, is what they try to do. And the last component we're going to talk about today is called plasma. And this is a clear to a yellowish liquid substance comprised of water, which is the main component. You also have amino acids in there. You have carbohydrates, lipids. You have vitamins and hormones. So your different waste products are there, and your proteins. So if you think back, a long time ago, we talked about your organic and inorganic substances. And your organic substances in the body were carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. And so of these, you have all three of them present in your plasma. You have three of the four. You're missing your nucleic acids, but that's because those are found in the nuclei of cells. And so these are found in your plasma. And then we go back. Also, we can talk hypotonic, hypertonic, and isotonic solutions. This is all related to the plasma in your cell. So when you lose water from your cell, you're losing this plasma, this watery material that's inside, and keeps everything else suspended within it. What your plasma does is it controls this osmotic pressure in body cells. So if your concentration of plasma proteins drops, your cells will swell and cause edema. Okay, so as you change your protein concentrations, that determines what happens to your cells. So this is where you get your hypotonic solution, your hypertonic solution, and your isotonic is all based on these plasma proteins that are found within your blood. Okay, and the last little bit of today, also in your blood, some of those proteins are called lipoproteins. Lipo referring to fats, protein referring to obviously a protein. These are proteins associated with cholesterol. And so lipoproteins carry cholesterol to liver to be used and broken down. And so your liver breaks down your cholesterol, and they're carried by these things called lipoproteins. Okay, and there are three types of lipoproteins. One, you have a low density lipoprotein, or an LDL. This is your bad cholesterol. This carries a small amount of lipids. This is very inefficient, and so you have a lot of it, which builds up in your blood vessels, which is not good for you. We also have very low density lipoproteins, which, if low is bad, very low is also bad. Arguably worse, which carries very little, I would say less lipoproteins than your LDLs do. And the last one you have is high density lipoproteins. This is the good cholesterol. This is the stuff that carries large amounts of lipids, large amounts of fats to be broken down in the liver. This is the stuff you want for cholesterol. And so because there are multiple types, it's important to understand that your total cholesterol doesn't really matter as much as much as it's kind of made out to be. The total number is not the issue. The ratio is important. If you have a low LDL to high HDL ratio, the better. It should be better than 4-1. So you should have roughly 4 LDLs to every 1 HDL. Okay, so 4-1, 2.2 to 4.4. Somewhere in there is the ratio. You want this 4-1, 3-1, something. You want a lot to 1 for your ratio. Right now, we say a lot. We don't want something like 11. That's not a good situation. That's a lot of bad cholesterol, not a lot of good cholesterol. Okay, and so you want this 2.2 to 4.4 LDL to HDL ratio. That's kind of what we're going for, shooting for here. That's what doctors are looking at when they give you, hey, your cholesterol is high, low, normal, so on and so forth. That's what they're looking at. Okay, here are some review questions for you to try. Make sure you look through these, work through these. If you have questions on them, please make sure you bring them to class when you return. And I look forward to continuing the rest of this unit with you in the very near future. For now, enjoy your day, and I will see you next time.